Look, I'm even going to start the recording.
Thank you.
So it's 1 o'clock, and we know your time is valuable to you, but we also know that you chose this session to come to, and so um, we want to try to start on time. Every year when we plan Welcome Week, we always look for for topics that would be of interest to faculty, and we thought that with all the things that have gone on this year for the last 2 years, that we would find some faculty that could discuss or introduce to you what they've done in their classes to as a response to the pandemic and some things that they learned and some things they're going to keep doing, and maybe they'll even share some stuff that they're not ever going to do again. So because failure is a way to learn, right? And so we'll go from there. So um, we have we were going to have 4 faculty members, but Becky Finken had a family emergency, and so she's not going to be with us this afternoon. But we have with us today Thad, Shauna, and Daniel. Um, Thad McElrath teaches physical education. How long have you been with the college, Thad?
This is year 11, I believe.
Okay. Thank you for coming today. Shauna Jones is an English instructor, English and humanities or English and literature. I don't remember what else she teaches. How long have you been with us, Shauna?
Full time since 2015, but I started adjuncting in 2013.
And I'll put a plug in for the North Carolina Great Teachers Seminar. Shauna and I went 1 year, and I barely knew Shauna before we went, and we had such an amazing time there. And I got to know her off campus, right, at a conference, and so it was an amazing week. So if you guys get a chance to go to North Carolina Great Teachers Seminar, please do. It's an amazing experience. And then we have Daniel Barrett, who teaches in our business technologies program. He's been with us for quite a while, but he's only been a full-time instructor for a couple of years. How long have you been on campus? And I don't think we have enough time for you to list all the things you've done on campus, but how long have you been
No.
working with CC Daniel?
9 years this year, 9 years.
Okay. And he's done everything from admissions to success coach to full-time instructor. So he's done a lot of different roles on campus. Great. We appreciate you guys being here today to share some of the things that you're doing in your class. So maybe we'll start with Shauna. How's that? Shauna, so one of the things that we do as instructors is we have to assess our students and assess our own teaching and our effectiveness in instruction. And we have to constantly use those assessments to try to improve our classes, right? So how have you done that in the last year and a half or so?
Well, I'll make the caveat first because I know a lot of you are in different disciplines, and one of the unique things about English and humanities instruction is that it's more of a qualitative thing, so they're not necessarily students memorizing concepts so much as learning skills and critical approaches and that sort of thing. So I hope that some of the stuff that I have to share with you guys today will apply even outside of my subject matter. But the primary tool that I have used for years, and it's become even more important during the pandemic, the distance learning, is reflection. Assigning short informal reflection assignments frequently. In my English 111 class, they actually have a reflection, they keep a writing journal through the whole semester, so they have a prompt every day. And this is really great because, when we're in the classroom, we can gauge student engagement. We can gauge how well they're grasping the material based on their facial expressions and their body language. But when we're online, we don't necessarily have those visual cues. And so we can sometimes feel like we are teaching, just staring at a screen and not, we don't know what's going on their end. We don't know if they're smiling or laughing or like, Mom, come look at this. Look at what my teacher's sharing. So we have to come up with ways to kind of pull that out of them. As an example of the sorts of things that I'll do, let's say, they just submitted a final draft of their paper. So I'll ask them, how do you feel? How would you rate your confidence on a scale of 1 to 10? What did you find challenging? What was your favorite part of it? And then something to extend that to future, how comfortable do you feel integrating source material or finding research articles on your own? And this not only helps you to gauge what they're getting, what they might not be getting, but it also encourages them to kind of self-identify what their strengths are and give themselves credit for that, but also what they need to work on. So it makes them more actively engaged in their own education. You know, it's not just on us to keep track of their progress, it's on them too. And it also allows you to kind of keep tabs on each individual student to get more of a sense of who they are as an individual through their writing. And it can help you identify gaps in your curriculum. You know, if you've got half of your class saying that they're struggling with the same thing, that's a chance for you to step back and say, okay, this is a skill I need to work on, or I need to create a new assignment for this. If it's something that, you know, they absolutely love, gives you a little affirmation, right? Because that's another thing that we're missing here when we don't have that visual affirmation, seeing them smile or laugh or have a light bulb moment. You know, we need that to know that we're doing our jobs properly. So it's good for that as well. And then at the end of this semester, I always have like one final feedback on the course where I'll ask them about the overall experience, you know, what their favorite assignments were, if they have any suggestions, and lastly, what advice they would give to a student who's going to take my class next semester. Because that's a great way to really get a sense of, you know, if they're like, I would tell them to prepare, I'll tell them that they're going to be doing a lot of reading, or I'll tell them that, you know, Miss Jones is hilarious and she'll talk about cats a lot, you know, and that tells me that I'm reaching them or not. So, and just in general, don't be afraid to ask for suggestions or for feedback, because that also shows them that their input matters. You're keeping an eye on my time, Rodney, right? I don't want to go. I could talk for a million years, but you know.
I'm going to let you ramble on as long as you want.
Okay.
How's that?
I'll keep going.
I mean, when you think that we need to stop, we can pass the torch, but
Okay.
keep going, because I'm loving what you're talking about.
So I tried to come up with some actionable things that you guys can try in your classroom, regardless of discipline. There's some tools and stuff, but some approaches, you know. But I think one of the biggest things to keep in mind here is that if something doesn't work, don't be afraid to scrap it and move on. You know, a lot of times we want to come across as being authorities, being professionals in our field, but you know, we don't all know everything, and knowledge is constantly changing. And one of the great ways to, you know, learn something new and to improve is to make mistakes and to let students know, okay, this didn't work out. And I'll use an example. In one of my classes, I tried to do a group brainstorming thing where I broke them into, you know, breakout sessions and dropped in on the rooms to kind of check what's going on. Only half the students in that class had a microphone. It was like pulling teeth to get them to engage. So I was like, okay, scrap this. So instead, let's move this to a discussion board and use a different modality for the same purpose that allows them to, you know, instead of having to type really quickly in real time, allows them to put a little bit more thought and consideration into that group activity. I had a lot of struggles in all my classes with people not having the technology to, you know, speak to us like we're doing right now. And so I've started with a lot of group activities and things that required student interaction. And by the end of the semester was doing a lot less of that because it didn't seem as effective as I wanted it to be. And I learned that, you know, participation does not necessarily equal engagement. You know, I might say something and hear crickets, but then later on when they're submitting work, they'll reference something I said in the lesson, or, you know, so there's like a delay there in the feedback that you're getting. So you got to be gentle on yourself a little bit too in this sort of thing, and allow yourself to make mistakes and admit those mistakes to students, because, you know, being human is important. So a couple of the suggestions, you know, I strongly recommend every instructor in every discipline do these sorts of reflection assignments, do low stakes writing assignments, because we know that writing skills are super important, and it's something that as an institution, we've really put a lot of emphasis in the last few years on improving our students' written and oral communication skills. So when students can use the skills that they're learning in the English 111, 112 classroom, in their chemistry class or, whatever class, they see the connections. They see how the skills they're learning in one class apply not only to their other classes, but to what they might do in the real world. We want to make students stakeholders in their own education. When I have an auto mechanics student or a cosmetology student who's like, why do I need to learn to write essays? I'm never going to write an essay in real life. Well, instead of just saying, because you have to, because that's what the class is about, I try to frame things in the real world, analogies, like persuasive writing strategies. Yeah, an auto mechanic may never need to write an essay, but they may need to convince their, manager that they need some sort of new equipment. And so they'll have to do their research and come up with the most persuasive way to appeal to that audience. And so when they can apply it in different contexts, they're much more likely to not only make those connections themselves, but see how relevant all aspects of their education are in the bigger picture. Let's see here. And some of the stuff, okay, got all my notes here that I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Couple strategies that you can use to draw those connections and to engage students. When you are assigning a topic or grading homework, you're grading a homework assignment, and this works both for seated classes and for synchronous classes, jot down things that students say. If they make a point or tell a story or ask a question, jot those down while you're grading, and then the next time that you meet, you can reference that. I would say, in my humanities class, a lot of what I learn there is what I learn from students. And I make it clear that we're all learning from each other and that what they bring to the table is important. So by referring back to that, by saying, oh yeah, so-and-so said something in their discussion board post about XYZ, it opens the door for them to, can you explain that a little bit more to us? So it gives them a prompt for engaging without them feeling that awkward, should I speak? I feel weird talking on my microphone kind of thing. And it also helps you, you can keep lists of student topics, what their project is focused on. Keep a running list of that, because when a student emails you with a question about their, I don't know about, should I use this article? Then you can go, oh yeah, that was your topic, reply quickly. I've also encountered like maybe a student's writing about a certain issue and I find an article about that. I'll email a link to that article to the student and say, hey, this made me think of you. And outside of the classroom, they feel, oh, wow, Miss Jones, really cares about what I'm doing and she's really invested in this, and it makes them more invested too. Yeah. Other things, something that I've been doing in my online classes, usually a lot of us have our students give presentations at the end of the semester. But that's much harder to do when you've got this kind of situation going on. So I found some different ways to kind of do that. One of the coolest tools that I've been using in a few different classes now is Google Sites. If you haven't messed around with it, it's part of our suite. It's a super basic, fairly easy to use way to build a website. And students are often like, this is the first time I've ever done this, and this is so cool. I didn't know that this was even a thing. And it's a new tool, a new modality of sharing, and yeah, gives them a good platform for folks who probably have public speaking, fears and things like that, to still share their ideas. Yeah. Try to pull in cross-disciplinary stuff that you might not, for example here, in my English 112 class, I actually have, for my natural sciences units, I have my students do a simple experiment, and then they write about that experiment. So even though it's not a science class, they're using the skills that maybe they used in their biology class last year, or maybe when they go into biology next semester, they'll be like, oh yeah, we did this in this class. And it again reinforces connections, that these subjects are not discrete, that they're all small bits of the bigger picture. And I guess my last little thing that I've done during the pandemic and prior, I offer extra credit for cultural events, that if they attend a concert, go to a museum, see a play, you know, attend one of the many sessions that we had online last year, that they'll do a write-up for me, a reflection, again, on that. And I ask them to kind of connect what they learned or what they experienced with what they've learned in the classroom in the same time. And it brings in a lot of interesting outside stuff that sometimes we can bring into our class discussions as well. So yeah, those are some of my tips, and I think I'll wrap up so I don't take up more of your time. But yeah, thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing, Shauna. And we'll come back for Q&A after everybody's had a turn. So if you guys have questions, you can type them in the chat box and we'll try to get to them, and we'll come back at the end and we'll have an open mic for them as well. So Daniel, one of the things that Shauna talked about was Google Sites, which is a lot of people would qualify that as kind of a new tech thing that you can do in your class. And I hear that you're doing some really cool tech things in your classes as a way to overcome student barriers to access in your class. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure thing. Well, I definitely want to echo what Shauna was saying about reflections. I'm doing something really similar, something that, I think, like she said, that we could do more easily in a synchronous face-to-face setting, was just to get those nonverbal affirmations, the students were grasping what we were saying and actually absorbing the content. And that's something that I definitely struggled with in the synchronous online environment when we were doing those Collaborate sessions over the last year. So one adjustment that I made was I started to record videos establishing expectations for a chapter or a module, depending on your curriculum, however you want to name it. But essentially, I would just do an overview of what was to be expected for the week and what I hoped our students would learn. But more importantly, I also added, I don't know if I would call them reflection exercises, I just call them checkpoints to the end of every chapter. Really short participation, low stakes type assignments, where I would just ask a few clarifying questions about things, maybe some of the more, I think we sometimes call it the muddiest point of the chapter, right? And I might just say, hey, you were supposed to learn this. Do you feel like you've grasped the topic? Do you have more questions? Is there something that I can help you with? And students would get 5% of their grade just for completing that exercise every single week. But it was also a way for me to stay in touch with each individual student one-on-one. I think I honestly had a finger to the pulse of my class more so in the digital environment by using those exercises than I ever did when I was in person, because in person, some students might come and stop and chat with you after class or come see you during office hours, but a lot of times students are shy or what have you and don't take advantage of those office hours. So I think by having that assignment, it really helped me understand where everyone was and if I needed to slow down, speed up, or add more resources to the class. But I'm sure many of you struggled with online participation. I know for me, it was crickets. I would try to administer a typical lecture, teach theory, stop and do small checkpoints during the class, and I would wait. I know many of my students, they would log in, but I'm not necessarily certain that they were there during the start of the pandemic, or they were just shy. They didn't want to use their microphones. It's definitely something that I've learned from participating in PD and from teaching during the pandemic, is that folks don't want to use their mic. So I had to come up with new creative ways for students to use their chat window to give me some signs of affirmation that they were there. So then I started thinking, well, what can I do to really get them more involved. And I started scouring the internet for other things, and I found some virtual simulations. I should say that I'm responsible for the finance curriculum. So kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum from Shauna, most of what I'm teaching is mainly quantitative. There is theory, and the theory is very important, but most students, when they're working with me in the classroom, they really want demonstrations. They want for me to show them how to apply the new methodologies that I'm teaching them. And so I found simulations online. Some of them were group simulations, which is really neat. Students were able to compete against one another, almost like an arcade game. So for example, we teach a little bit about investing, stocks, mutual funds, bonds, and personal finance. And I was just lucky enough to find a simulation where the students are, once they learn enough of the content and they kind of are more familiar with those topics, they can get a free opportunity to invest and not only compete against a computer, but compete against one another. And then I would make it fun. It would be an in-class exercise. There was an instructor dashboard where I could watch everyone and see how they were doing. So I would try to interact with them through my microphone, encourage them to keep investing, keep diversifying their portfolio. It was really fun. They got a lot out of it. And I would look for other things like that. There were a few other examples that I'd be happy to share. Additionally, I usually, for my upper level students for business finance, I have them do an actual semester long stock market simulation where they're given virtual money, virtual funds, but they actually use the true stock market. So all the data that pours into the simulator comes from real stock market values. The only thing that's fake is the money itself. But part of that simulation is working in teams. Teaching these students how to work as a group, how to identify a leader, how to share responsibility. And usually I would give class time to do that. The pandemic definitely made that a challenge, but I kind of saw the silver lining in it. And, I reminded the students that, not only were they pushed into the virtual environment, but so were we. And so we were, as professionals, we were having to learn how to interact with one another, complete projects with one another in a virtual sense. And so I used that as an opportunity to strengthen their interpersonal communications in the online environment. So I actually took the rubric, added a new column, and they were actually allowed to rate one another, their peers, on communications and how well they kept up communication since they weren't being given class time like they would normally be given. And also, I normally have a presentation that the group gives at the end of the semester on what they learned. They were able to present just like we're presenting now, but with a PowerPoint as a team virtually. I think those are some skills that, that they'll be able to walk away with regardless of the discipline that they go into, and they'll be able to represent us well. A few other things I did, we typically use a handheld calculator. Obviously, that gets troublesome. It was already troublesome. In the classroom, I had to use a virtual calculator. I don't know how many math instructors I have here today, but I had like a virtual calculator that I could interact with on a smart board. Couldn't do that through Collaborate, so we actually switched over to using Microsoft Excel as a smart calculator, and I was able to teach students how to use Microsoft Excel to solve many of the calculations that we were using handheld calculators for. That saved them a little bit of money, allowed them to use their free Microsoft Office access, got them more familiar with Excel, and also helped them learn how to solve financial problems. So that was a lot of fun. I have my notes too. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't skip over anything. Oh, I think probably one of the biggest things that I had to do to be able to offer my students all of these things was I would sit down once a week and I would record theoretical lectures. So think flipped classroom, but in the virtual sense. And what I would do is I would go over theory, definitions, fundamental concepts. I would try to keep those between 30 minutes and an hour, no longer. And I would ask students to watch those prior to meeting over Collaborate so that I would have more time to demonstrate mathematical problems, answer homework questions, give students the opportunity to share their screen and show me what they did on their homework. and so on, so that they could get more comfortable with solving a lot of the problems that we are asked to solve in the finance realm. So I would highly recommend that if anyone is teaching Collaborate, that you try to do something similar, because the feedback that I got from the students was that it was much more helpful than watching me teach them from a PowerPoint. So I think that's all I had to say for now anyway.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Once again, we'll do an open Q&A session in just a few minutes. And so before we got started on the session, Thad and I were kind of talking a little bit about, Thad tried to back out of this session like 2 weeks ago because he's not a tech guy. So he's like, I'm not doing any new tech or anything else like that. And I said, no, but you are a relationship person. I think Daniel and Shauna both touched on some of the relationship ideas and things that are important in the classroom. Dad, how have you tried to build those relationships in this virtual world, and how's that going to impact your teaching going forward?
Yeah, I think Rodney, you really mentioned it, and what Shauna and Daniel have said have really been good. I've been trying to take some notes, listening to you guys too, and that's even having already shared some notes with you guys prior to meeting. So you guys have a lot of good stuff, and I'm sure everybody here has some good things. But I think what you can really come from is from hearing Shauna and Daniel is all the tools and the things that they're talking about are so great, and they're designed to build up that connection with students. And really that's what, if you boil it all down to education, if we don't have a connection with the student, that experience for them, and maybe for us, is not going to be the best. So I love these ideas, because I'm never the one to have these ideas with the tech stuff. I'm always stealing ideas from everybody else. But I think going back to the pandemic and what it taught me about my teaching is that obviously we had to embrace technology. We all learned brand new things we've never done. We still are, and technology is good. We could keep going, but sometimes it can also hinder things. And what it made me do is kind of do an introspection, like look at my own motivations and my own, like, why am I doing this? And I don't know if anybody else went through that period during the pandemic, but like everything's changing so fast, and you're having to learn 400 new things. And I mean, I love the internet, but I'm a hands-on person. I like being in the gym with students and physically showing them things and sweating, and it just rips my heart out not to do that stuff. And so I'm like, why am I doing this? And when I answer that question, it wasn't really about my content area, even though I teach health and fitness science. My answer is probably the same answer as most of you. My answer was, it was to make a difference, to make a connection, to build these students. That's the reason why I went into teaching. And to be fully transparent, I actually started coaching before I was ever teaching. I had coached 5 years before I ever began teaching, and coaching is what led me to want to teach. And so I know the field that I'm in, it definitely relates back to coaching, but everything that I talk about in the classroom is dealing with coaching. And so I think I would say the one thing that I remember and still kind of processing this is, ask yourself, what's your motivation for teaching? And your answer might be slightly different than mine, but I'm sure it's probably something centered around the student. And when you realize that, and when I realized that, it made me more passionate about, okay, I'm going to learn Daniel's new really cool tech thing, even though I struggle with it. I'm going to learn this because it's another way for me to connect with the student. So, and the same thing with what Shauna said. I mean, there's so many things that I'm always like resistant and hesitant. I'm like, oh, they're way smarter than me. I can't do that, and I'm gonna really mess this up. And so I'm hesitant to try those things. But then when I think about the why is, okay, yeah, I'm gonna try that. I may fail. And I love what Shauna said. I think Daniel said it too, is being able to show your humanity, your mistakes. And that's what I love about being in the class, because I can fail all the time. If we're weightlifting, I might just do something horrible. And, it's like, oh, this is what not to do. And you learn from that. And so I think learning to show your mistakes, whether that's online or in person, letting them see who you are as a person. I mean, I know we're all guarded to an extent, and I know everybody has a little bit different personality, but if the more transparent you can be about, oh man, I really messed that up on Blackboard, sorry guys, and just having the ability to apologize to your students is a really big deal in my book. We always have these super high expectations for our students, and we should. But what about the times where, oh, I told you I'd get that grade in a week, and it's been 2 weeks? And so it's being humble enough to go back and tell those students, hey, I'm really sorry. I told you this was going to be graded. It wasn't. I told you number 12 was right and it was wrong. And, just having the truthfulness and the transparency to talk about those things. And so and Rodney, you'll love this, but talking about coaching in the college coaching world, one of the greatest legends to ever live passed away this past Sunday, Florida State's Bobby Bowden. And whether you follow football or not, you've probably heard that name, Bobby Bowden. And I was listening this week to some coaches talk about his life and his legacy, and all the wins and the national championships and all that stuff, and it's unbelievable. But what everybody pointed to was something he was always saying, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't mess it up. He would say it's not about the X's and O's that but it's about the Jimmys and the Joes that you grow. And so what he's saying there is it's not so much about your content. The X's and O's is the coaching content, if you're teaching business or English, it's not really about the X's and O's, but as Coach Bowden would say, it's about the Jimmys and Joes, and it's about growing those relationships. And so if you can grow the relationship, then your content stuff is going to come almost naturally. And so I've just been just reflecting on his life and his legacy, and I'm thinking, isn't that something that we all would want to do, is to really build into people so that they can grow. Dr. Chapman says it all the time, that we are a place that people are passing through, right? They come through us to get to another destination, and our job is to grow them. And so maybe they don't remember every single weightlifting technique or every single human anatomy thing we talk about in my class, but they remember that sense of encouragement, that sense of confidence that we as faculty can give to those students. And they may not be all A and B students. You can still give that sense of encouragement and confidence, self-confidence to those students that are just giving their very best. And sometimes their very best might be a C. So I think for me, just reflecting on it, is if I'm going to remain passionate, because the one thing I don't want to do is become stale in my teaching. And the pandemic, I think, made me and probably all of us feel like this feels the same every single day, and I can't stand this. And so if I'm going to be passionate in my teaching, I have to remember what the motivation is behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's not really my content area. And I love my content area. I really do. And I know you guys love yours. But if you really boil it down, I bet you it's because you guys all at some level want to make a difference in students' lives. This is a place we want them to grow. And so I just love the stuff that's already been mentioned. Rodney, I was reading there, while we love students come back and we see that they are. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Is we have to, if we don't make those connections, it's kind of like advising. If we're not making those connections that Dean Byington's always talking about, advising is very hard, right? But if you make the connections, advising is very easy. And the same thing is true for teaching. And so I'll just, what I've learned through all this is to be as individualistic as possible, which is very difficult, I understand, on the internet and on the screens. But I think it's become, with our technology, it's become so easy for us to send mass emails to students. And I definitely do that. I'll hit, send the reminder button, hey, your assignment's late or whatever. And those things are definitely useful, but it's also useful to do a individual email, like Shauna was talking about. Daniel mentioned this. And another thing I did, I know a lot of you do too, is I just set up a Google Voice account, and because I learned that I could really connect with some students via text when they were never checking their email. And so I would just text with them from my Google Voice account, so it's not my personal phone or anything. And man, I could learn about their life story through a text message, and I could never get them to check their email. So it's just about finding a way to connect, and that's, again, that process alone takes so much time. But once the connection's made, it's kind of like, for me, building a bridge. And so now the bridge is there, then the learning can go through and can occur. And I think looking back on at least the beginning of the pandemic, I was trying to like force feed content, and I was getting a lot of what you guys got, crickets, and like Summerlin said, the muted crickets. And I'm like, whoo, this is not working. And so I think I need, what I'm learning is to go back and really focus on the bridge building and the connections and the motivation behind why I do what I do. And then the content is just going to flow naturally. And I mean, you've heard some great ideas, these reflection pieces and some of the technology things that Daniel was sharing. I mean, this stuff it's so above my head. I'm like, man, this is amazing. That's why I was telling Rodney what I did. Is like, I'm not sure I really have anything to contribute, because I can't point you to a website or something that's super cool. But I'm glad that we have people that do, because I'm going to go watch this again and take all their notes and use it. But yes, Rodney, I think our relationships and our connections are what is meaningful to getting students to grow, not only academically, but personally and socially as well.
Thanks, Thad. Yeah, I believe in the power of relationships, and I think what a lot of the tech tools that they discuss and things that they're doing is helps build that, right? I mean, it's not only giving the assignments important, but the feedback that you give to the students once they turn it in is important, right? And so it shows them that, hey, you took enough time to read what I wrote and you made a comment about it. That shows that they're important, and that's helping build that relationship. Um, so um,
There's
so
something
we
else
have some. Go ahead.
I wanted to add here, because I know that Becky was planning to talk about it, and I think it's an important thing to mention here. But one thing that I've definitely learned and that I'm going to take into my classroom, in the future, is the importance of talking about mental health, normalizing that we all go through periods of depression, we all struggle, and that it's okay. I would admit to them, look, this has been a really rough week, and I haven't been able to do as much as I wish I would have. And that makes them feel comfortable when they're struggling. Instead of doing it alone, they're like, oh, Miss Jones knows what this is like, so I can talk to her about this. I had students lose family members. I had students get COVID themselves, and it wipes them out. I had students diagnosed with cancer or various disorders during the semester, and that majorly impacts what they are able to do. But when they feel like you understand and you are emotionally invested, they want to make you proud, they want to please you, and that's good for all of us all around. So yeah, mental health, normalize it.
I think that's a great point, because I mean, one of the things that I do sometimes, and when I walk into classes, when we're in person, and I try to do it when we were doing collaborate sessions as well, say, hey guys, I had a rough night. My dog was sick last night, and we're going to get through this together today. I need y'all to help me, right? And they value that, right? Because it humanizes you. And so they go, okay, yeah, I remember last week when my dog was sick and it was rough the next day, right? They get it, right? And so anything you do that makes or builds that connection is so important. Like the word Daniel uses, shared experiences, right? Absolutely. It's not just about the classroom, it's about all that other stuff. And they connect to you, and then you can do what you need to do with them. The great Fred Fritz used to say, if they believe that you care, they'll go through a wall for you, right? So I think that's one of the things we need to remember and work on, those relationships. So we have a few minutes still. If we can open the floor up for any questions or Q&A time. If people have questions, they can either turn on their mic or we're all monitoring the chat box. So if you, however you feel comfortable, if you have questions for three great instructors here, please ask at this point. Don't give us the crickets. We've heard enough about crickets today. Oh, how do we set up Google Voice with our work email? Good question. That's a good question, Summerlin. Who wants to take that one? Dad, you're the one that said you use Google Voice.
Yeah, I was going to say I should take it, but at the moment I can't remember how I set it up. I can look it up, Summerlin. I can get you an email, I promise, but I don't have it off the top of my head. I can't remember how I did that. Adam Wade actually helped me set mine up. So.
Okay, fill him out. I'll go bother him.
No, he was helping me out with mine, and so I use it a lot. But at the top of my head, I can't remember how to do it.
Hey, I think I can help on this one. Basically, it's tied to your email account that's associated with Google. In our case, CCCC is tied into Google. So as long as you sign in with either your CCCC account or a Gmail related account, they automatically tie in. And that's one of the reasons why I like Google Voice, is that I'll get an email if I miss a phone call or a text. So it comes to me not just as a phone notification, but it comes in my email as well.
Oh, and Seth put a website on there too. So yeah, I agree with Summerlin. I had one a number of years ago and I didn't use it for a while, and so it kind of it went away. And then I tried to set it up with my school email account and it did something wonky, and so I'm not exactly sure what it did.
Yeah, I think I remember back, and Fred, I appreciate that very much. I think that I did set mine up through my phone, through the app, and I did use my personal email account because I had something weird happen with the work email account too. So definitely.
Oh, that's actually a great idea. And Aaron, I don't know if Aaron's paying attention, but I just gave Aaron some work to do. So we'll set up a session with IT. I'm sure Monty or somebody can do a quick 10-minute tutorial on how to set up your Google Voice account with screenshots and all that kind of stuff, because that's what people really want, is a walkthrough. And Blake's asking if you can share the stock simulator you used. Yeah, because they could use it in a statistics class or in a math class for sure, right? That would be cool. So, yep. See, look at this cross collaboration going on. Look at that. Look at that. That's awesome. I love getting a bunch of people together from different disciplines to hear what they're doing. It's just Dad, we're going to start doing the teaching communities again this fall. And so I was talking to somebody the other day about, I used to love listening to hear what Regina Mentor was doing in her class, because she always had great ideas. So I'm looking forward to doing some more of those kinds of things this fall. So
yeah, those are very good. And what Ronnie Russell, what you mentioned about the great teacher seminar, I was thinking about when I attended, and just all the cross collaboration of that. And we can do it here on campus like we're doing right now. And I always learn more, when we talk through cross curriculum. So I echo and I'm thankful for all the input.
And thanks for chiming in, Fred, and helping out Summerlin. Any other questions anybody has? Well, I guess we're at the point of those chocolate crickets. Well, it's chocolate ants, not chocolate crickets. Well, how do they cook the crickets when you eat them? The ants they cover in chocolate. What do they do with crickets before you eat them? Oh, fried crickets. There you go. So we're at the point of fried crickets. There, look. This is deep fried. This is the South. Yeah, exactly, Summerlin. Do we have to pre-batter them, or we just throw them in without any batter? I think they got to have batter, don't they? So, dip and ranch. I think we're going down a bad road real fast here. Thanks, Summerlin. Oh my goodness. This is a great group. I love doing this. So, um, students like competing against each other. That's a good one, Amy. So, yeah, I mean, so you can set up all kinds of competition things like Kahoot, Jeopardy, all kinds of things. There's lots of online tools that you can use to create competition among your students, right? So, yeah, Kahoot's an oldie but a really goodie. You can do it in person, you can do it online. There's lots of different ways to do it. So, absolutely. So, all right, guys. We appreciate the time and the energy that you guys put into getting ready for today. Um, thanks to Thad, Daniel, and Summerlin, or Summerlin. Thanks for Summerlin for chiming in, for Shauna, for preparing and coming today. And the session was recorded. It's being recorded. It'll be posted in the Blackboard site, and so if you need to go back and reference it, it'll always be available for you. So thanks everybody, and we'll see everybody on campus. I hope everybody has a great start to the semester.